So let's talk for a little bit. If you want to, you can listen. And the end result of that is that money is a promise. It's not more than that, other than it's a resource. We cannot do anything without the resource to fulfill the promise or to create the work that we need to do to, satisfy ourselves that we are in fact doing something and something is actually making a difference in our lives so that we can change the world, so to speak. Can do what we can do. But the end result is that money is a promise, and therefore bankruptcy is the end of all those promises. That's what bankruptcy means. All the promises you made that you cannot keep, that you will not be able to keep, that nobody could keep, are over. They're over. You failed by letting them be created. You failed by letting credit and things get out of hand. You failed life and nature and world and nation and everything. You failed. You failed your child. You failed everything because you wanted what you wanted. And there isn't anything else that can be said. You failed. So in other words, to get back to reality, we have to eliminate the promises that cannot be kept and return to the promises that we can actually, in fact, keep in one form or another, respecting the idea that the future has a call for resources too. And you can't make promises that are based upon let the children pay. All of the things that have been going on for the last 50 years have been let the children pay, at least in this United States, because that's where the universities have led you. Universities, they are intellectuals. They create traps. They create mazes. They create false identity. They create the illusion of language to hide the things that they're really actually doing. Where one word will actually do it, this is life, they create 50 billion of them. So to hide the fact that they're cursing life. It is really quite literally that simple. They use words and they create mazes and they establish traps and they make promises they can't keep and so on and so on and so on because they want to be God, and of course they can't be God, and that's a problem. So returning to reality means that we have to accept our limits and our boundaries. We have to identify what is hope that we can enforce, what is happiness that we can create for ourselves, what is a world that we can protect, and what is world law, the replacement of leaders, so that we can actually enforce that we're not going to spend all our resources and all our money for military purposes. And we're not going to allow people to threaten us anymore, and we're not going to do this and that because we're going to enforce an international policing of leaders. No, you can't. And we'll bring you to court, and we'll let you decide, what your evidence of had to do it is, and we'll let your nation have a big say in what happens to you, and we'll let the rest of the world decide for a fact what is or is not actually important for our planet. And that, of course, includes all the things that you do to the ocean and all the things that you do to the resources and all the things that you do to the future and everything that is about this planet. In other words, no more delusions, no more believers, no more of anything that is other than what truth decides. And truth decides, in real world terms, that there must be limited capitalism. That means that there cannot be any more billionaires or trillionaires or whatever it is. Cannot be. We're going to remove that from you. We're going to do that as a nation or even as a world. We're going to remove the claim that you have promises that allow you to take anything that you want. You cannot do that. You can't. You cannot do that. We have needs too. And we're not going to give you the claim, I'm a winner. Because you're not a winner, you're just a person like the rest of us. You're just a person like the rest of us. Even though you found a way to amass promises that can't be kept. That in the last 50 years have all been about the fantasy that there are no consequences for the truth of what you do. There are no consequences for a world that cannot survive, or a world that cannot be sustained, or chains of light that are completely destroyed, or a entire planet overheating, or anything. You are a failure. There's nothing more or less that can be said about that. You are a failure. You failed life, you failed the planet, you failed nature, you failed the nation, you failed your children, you failed, you failed, you failed. You failed. And so the road back runs through the sewage of what you created by all your wants. Nope, wants ain't enough. It takes reality to create a life and sustain a life. It takes truth. You can't survive without truth. And all the lies in the world are not going to change that. They just make you extinct. So we have to have limited capitalism, which means that we as the nation, or even we as a world, decide by our vote, by a public vote of all kinds, that where the limit of how much money you are allowed to have, or how many possessions you are allowed to own, or what is your income for an entire year going to be. Limits here. And of course there's a bottom limit as well. No, we're not going to work for 40 hours a week or whatever it is for less than this amount. And in between those is where the rest of us survive. So that's what limited capitalism is, by our vote, and our repeated vote every 10 years or whatever it is. And even less to start, so we have to create a situation in which we understand what we are doing. To understand what you're doing, you have to be educated in what the consequences of these truths, these decisions are. If you don't understand the consequence, you can't make a reasonable decision. You have to take control of the courts, because the courts are the primary purpose of how you keep a society happy and at peace and justified, and what causes its disgrace and its destruction and its turmoil, as is the case in this United States today. The average person, by far, you can count anywhere, they're all scared to death of the courtroom of the United States. And they have a right to be, because they're thugs and criminals and organized crime and every form of chaos and every form of cannibalism, every form of stupidity and disgrace that you could possibly imagine in those courtrooms. They fail life. They fail fair play. They fail justice. They fail the Constitution. They fail the nation and the world and everything else. And yeah, I'm not very happy with you. So we have to accept the fact that we cannot enforce what is going to be needed without dividing into groups. We can't divide into groups unless you can recognize this group belongs here and that group belongs there. That's the facts of life. Like it or not, don't make no difference. Because we can't enforce anything if we are not groups. And you say this group did their job, this group did not do their job. And so the consequence of that is the people who did not do their job are going to be punished in one form or another. In other words, we cannot have 100 million more people to feed each and every year. It won't work. It can't work. We'll be cannibals. You'll be starving. It won't work. Thirsting to death. It won't work. You have to stop. And that's a reality of women. Only women give birth to children. You cannot give 1 billion men a vasectomy, and that would just destroy so many things you can't even imagine. It's a complete failure. It is. And they don't. One man, with sperm donors, or one man could be responsible for a million children. It doesn't work. It will never work. You can't do it. On the other hand, it is women that have children. And we have to have a reasonable and fair and realistic, and like an IUD, which has over 100 years of practice, and we know exactly what it is or it is not. And pharmaceuticals don't get paid for that. They get paid very, very, very little for that, so they don't like it. So they try to do what they can to dismiss it. But you need to look at what your options are and make the right choice as women. It is not a choice of men, it is a choice of women. You are evicted from that decision as men. You don't belong there. It's not your job. Just as abortions or any of their other parts, not your job. You don't get to decide, you get to pay as men. And of course, we have to divide a group, because if that group, populates the earth twice as much as this group does, well, then that group has to be punished for that. It doesn't matter whether you want to or not. Our world, our lives, our everything depends upon the fact that we cannot continue as we are. It will be extinct. It's not a game anymore. So you have to understand that fact. And you have to divide into sections, and it might be as simple as states already have boundaries. So we have 50 states, so 50 groups. And you're going to create boundary lines around the ones that will not cooperate and things like that, because we have to. Because there's no other way to say, you can't create rules. You can't create rules so that you can have rulers and tyrants. You have to have laws. Say this group is a little nation of their own. They have their own rules. They have their own laws. They have their own ways of doing things. It is their job. It is their decision. It's not yours. It is theirs, just like yours is yours. But as far as the world goes, there's boundaries and limits to what anybody, don't matter who, anybody can do, because that's what we have to do in order to save this planet. And you can argue and you can complain and you can say, well, the math is this or math is that or whatever it is. You bitch and moan and groan. Whatever it is, you do. But the end result is only animals don't understand what a future is. That's the difference between human and animal. An animal does not understand what the future is more than a day or two. So you do, however, understand. Of course, that doesn't mean all of you. There are animals and there's hate and there's all kinds of things that get in the way of human behaviors that are not fair and not justified and cannot be allowed anymore. You have to grow up. You have to actually find a way to be some participant in life rather than a participant in want. Want is not enough. And yes, I'm bitching and moaning at you, and I've been accused of that many times, but the end result of it is, at this point in time, for 50 years, we're waiting for you to find a moment when you can actually recognize that the future is not going to be what you want it to be, because you're killing yourselves, you're killing your planet, you're killing all life on Earth, you're just completely destroying everything we depend upon. And of course you said, I ain't gonna believe that. I'm not gonna pay for none of that, none. But of course, maybe, hopefully, the time has come when you can actually find a method to actually think beyond yourself. Can you think beyond yourself? I doubt it, but I'm 71 years old. Time's running out. If the average life expectancy for me would be 76 years, so I have 4 or 5 years left, maybe more, maybe less. Doesn't matter, but at any rate, time has run out. Time is running out for me, time is running out for you, because the end result is soon you won't be able to find any water to drink. Soon you won't be able to find any food to eat. Soon you will have war everywhere, because one nation says, well, we're not going to stay, we're going to go take theirs. And the other nation says, you can't. And of course, weapons of mass destruction will be used, because you'll kill 1 billion people. That's just 1 in 8 of us. 1 in 8. 1 billion people dead. And of course the disease that they treat will infect you and kill you and so on. We cannot be what we are. And your food, every portion and every part of your food production is being destroyed or is destroyed or there's nothing about university leads that isn't a fantasy or a delusion or an imagination. There's very, very, very little about university that matters to life except for the fact that they are just created themselves as hell, as created themselves as Satan. Decided that they can play God. Decided that consequences don't matter to them. There's nothing that can defeat them, but reality can. Truth does.